It's been a while since I've done an edition of Why Do You Own This? Or Why Do I Own This? I don't even remember what the title of this little thing that I started a little while back. And I was staring at my DVDs and went, oh, wait, why do I own this? It is Neil Marshall's Doomsday! And this is one that, like, it's so obvious when I see it on the shelf, but I did want to talk a little bit about the background for maybe people that are a little older or a little younger than me. So this movie came out in 2008, and it wasn't quite a wasteland for horror back then. I think at that point we were in the middle of the zombie wave where, when I started getting into movies, there weren't that many zombie films. It was few and far between, but then Resident Evil came out, and I said, oh boy, I wish we could get more zombie films now, and then it never ended, and that's all we got. We were getting a lot of low-budget films because in 2008, like, the DVD boom was happening, and a ton of those kind of, like, low-budget movies were coming out, and you just go to HMV or Music World and you could pick them up. There was, like, no differentiation between what was low-budget or high-budget, and so it was, like, a golden time. And it was in this kind of era that I stumbled upon a little film called Dog Soldiers. I think at the time I was going to websites like Arrow in the Head and learning about new horror films of what was coming out. And Dog Soldiers was one that played the festival circuit, came out, and boy, when I finally got my hands on a DVD, I loved it. Neil Marshall's, I think his feature debut was everything that I wanted in these kind of movies. It felt fresh. It was a little bit convoluted, but it had cool werewolves, and the actors were really charming. Dog Soldiers, I have not watched it in a long time. I'm sure it's still fun. I don't think it's probably as fun as I thought it was back then. And so after that, Neil Marshall had The Descent. And The Descent was kind of like a phenomenon. I like The Descent. It's that kind of pure horror I enjoy, but The Descent almost seemed to be everywhere. And I kind of got tired about it for a while. I say this knowing that, like, if you weren't in horror circles, you probably didn't know, like, all of these big fads as they were going out. Like, The Descent came out, you probably saw it and went, oh, that was cool. And then Doomsday came out. Doomsday was announced. I remember I was so excited for it. I could not wait to go to the theater to see Doomsday because Neil Marshall, he was kind of like not a champion, or a chosen one of horror film fans that got to make good, that he was going and he was following his passions. He did kind of a war siege film with Dog Soldiers, and then he did like a straight horror film that was somehow able to penetrate the mainstream with The Descent. And with Doomsday, all the interviews and stuff like that he did, he was very clear that this was his ultimate movie. And I love these kind of like, I'm going to put everything that I got into a motion picture because this may be the last time that I do it. Is it going to work? Probably not, because you're just stuffing everything into it. But I always am attracted to that because you see it so rarely that, like, as artists, oftentimes, especially when you're making entertainment, a lot of people tend to try to pull back. That the idea of that if you put too much of yourself out there or go too over the top, that it is going to be too much for the regular audience. Oftentimes it is, but that kind of, control is a little bit disappointing. Like, so many movies I see, especially horror films, I think, oh, if they had just pushed it a little bit further, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. And so Doomsday was just everything unleashed. And I remember sitting down in the theater, watching it, big grin on my face, and going, I liked it, but I wanted to love it. I convinced myself at the end that I was like, that was pretty good. And I watched it on DVD when it came out, and I followed the next thing Neil Marshall did. But it's such a fascinating movie that it's everything that I want in those kind of films, but just done. It's just fine. Nothing gets a chance to develop. So you get, like, for people who may not have seen the film and are watching this video completely randomly. So Rona Mitra goes into the wasteland and I think she needs to find a cure. So there's a little bit of Mad Max. There's, like, some medieval stuff that shows up at the end. And I remember just sitting there going, like, this is cool, but this isn't really working for me. That nothing had quite enough of a chance to develop to really hit me in the field. And I feel like Doomsday is kind of like that last gasp that Neil Marshall had as a filmmaker for me. And, like, I own this film. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I'm keeping it because I think there's so many memories tied up with this that I have a feeling that if I watch it, they're all going to come flooding right back of, like, this particular moment in time, what Neil Marshall represented for me at that time. And kind of, to say a bummer of what turned out with Neil Marshall's career, like, he's still working, he's still making horror films. Centurion came out. I did not like that very much. Again, but Neil Marshall was following his passions. He wanted to make kind of like a sword combat movie, and he went and did it, and it just didn't really work for me. And then he also made Hellboy. Actually, I kind of like Hellboy, his version of Hell. I know everybody hates it, but that is a wild and wacky film that I think it's really fun, and I think it's representative of Hellboy in a different mode than the Guillermo del Toro film, and they can both exist together. Now, there's a third Hellboy movie coming out from Millennium Film, supposedly, that Brian Taylor of Crank fame directed, but we'll see how that one goes, too. And then Neil Marshall, he became a TV director, and then his story of what ended up happening is pretty wild. You can find it online if you search Neil Marshall and I believe his current partner or wife, and that they decided to go make movies together. And those movies were so disliked that, like, I haven't even attempted to go see them. There's The Lair, and then there's another one as well. But I will always have Doomsday. And it's wild that, like, this one that I have in my hands is actually, oh my God, it's a Blockbuster video disc. So when I was a teenager and I had no money, like, one of the most exciting things was going to Blockbuster Video and getting films that, like, came off the rental wall, and they would have deals of, like, 2 for $14 or 2 for $10, and I would wait until they go and then go through the bins and pick them up. And this is probably where I got this. This is a remnant of something that just does not exist anymore. So I'm absolutely, holding on to this one. And maybe one day I'll watch it again and go, you know what? I was too hard on Doomsday. It's actually pretty great. If you enjoyed this and you want to hear more talk about Blu-rays, check out the Base 3 Video Podcast. It's a podcast that me and Mark Hansen, a product manager at a brick and mortar video store, do every week, where we talk about all the notable Blu-rays and DVDs. You can check that out. There's a link below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And thanks for watching.